Ever feel like you suck at this job? Motherhood, I mean. Have too much anxiety and not enough patience? Too much yelling, not enough play? There's no manual, no village, no guarantees. The stakes are high. We want so badly to get it right. But this is survival mode. We're just trying to make it to bedtime. So if you're full of mom guilt, your temper scares you, you feel like you're screwing everything up, and you're afraid to admit any of those things out loud, this podcast is for you. This is Failing Motherhood. I'm Danielle Bettman, and each week we'll chat with a mom ready to be real, sharing her insecurities, her fears, her failures, and her wins. We do not have it all figured out. That's not the goal. The goal is to remind you, you are the mom your kids need. They need what you have, you are good enough, and you're not alone. I hope you pop in earbuds, somehow sneak away, and get ready to hear some hope from the trenches. You belong here, friend. We're so glad you're here. Hey, it's Danielle. Even just myself listening to that intro as I begin to record, I'm starting to feel nostalgic, like I'm not ready to let this go. But at the same time, I feel like it's time. It just feels right. But I can always pick it back up in the future, and it will always live on. And all the episodes will be here still. So it's okay. And if you haven't heard, we're wrapping up Failing Motherhood at the end of May. So we are hitting a stride on these last few episodes leading up to our 200th episode on the 5-year anniversary of Failing Motherhood, May 20th. So as you ride that wave with us, we're so glad you're here. And I would love for you, if you have benefited from the podcast at all, to show your solidarity in wanting other parents to know they are not alone if they feel like they're failing motherhood or parenting on a daily basis, that you would just rate the show on Spotify 5 stars or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That would be just such a show of community in being able to participate and be a part of these last few episodes together. So thank you for doing that. And today I am going to share a few excerpts of things that I shared on a recent coaching call relating to this universal struggle around setting boundaries. It feels ambiguous, it feels difficult, and we have a lot of misconceptions around what boundaries even are and how you do them, and give yourselves permission to even stray from them or know how to, or just really take the pressure off of feeling like you're failing at setting boundaries. So this topic came up with some of my clients, and they were asking, how do I set boundaries? How do I figure out where the line is of what matters and what doesn't? And how do I follow through knowing that I'm not being permissive and walked all over? How do I know if it's just developmentally appropriate and I can let it go, or if it's like a do or die thing that is going to set this like huge precedent that I can't not set that boundary, follow through. And when I do set that boundary, does that mean that I basically put my foot down and then a explosion happens, right? That it's an all or nothing. And I'm either avoiding the meltdown or I'm creating the meltdown. And I'm always finding myself at this crossroads and I can't not mess up. Like the stakes are high. It's all in this moment on me. And I'm creating a sense of either entitlement or permissive parenting. And it just feels almost impossible. So today I'm going to share what I shared with those clients in hopes that it not only helps you clarify what you're responsible for, what the goal is, and what your role is, but it also just helps you feel like it's more doable and you're probably doing a better job at it than you thought. So as you begin listening to these excerpts, I start with validating the intent to figure out boundaries at your house. And then I talk about the problem with not having boundaries at your house. And then I make an important distinction in the shift that needs to be made when parenting strong-willed kids. And then I get into what to do and think instead of what may have been your default in how you view boundaries and how you implement them. So let's dive in. That is exactly what we're all here to do. And it is not a super quick fix, easy button. Oh, now I've mastered it forever and always. It's always going to be another iteration or going deeper with it or having more nuanced understanding or being able to know when you can give yourself permission to kind of go above and beyond that and being able to rationalize that in a really healthy way. It's the same thing with like establishing a very healthy relationship with food. It's not the super, super, super rigid, you can never have these foods, you can always eat, like you want it to be sustainable, a way of being and eating and meeting your needs while also, having these priorities and being able to meet those priorities in a way that feels good and valuing what they have to offer in ways that also allow you to have self-compassion when you eat a carton of ice cream. Like it's all the skills that you need within that. That's why it takes time. So give yourself that time and that expectation of just what it feels like to really do that. But naming it is half of it because then you know exactly what problem to solve. The very, very, very important work to protect your relationship. The lack of boundaries creates a whole lot of resentment, division, conflict, and just overall wearing down of connection because you are feeling like you can't be yourself. You feel like you're not safe. You feel like you have to defend yourself. And then, they feel the same way when there is inconsistent or incomplete understanding of boundaries. And it also leads to a sense of entitlement by default because if we don't advocate that two things can be true and I have needs and you have needs and they both matter, then the path of least resistance is whoever gets catered to the most, their needs matter more. And they can't matter more than another person because otherwise that does create spoiled kids. And that's not what we're here to create. And when you feel like you are and your gut screams to you, hey, this isn't going to be good. I don't want them to think that I'm setting this precedent, that their needs will always trump somebody else's. You'll feel that. And then that turns into that swarm of like guilt and confusion and frustration of your own behavior when you feel like you are compromising all the time, always. So that is very much the reality, very valid. And we all feel it and have solidarity with that, 100% universal. And I think one of the things that's really important to identify with boundaries is that it's not, again, a binary of either we set a boundary and we follow through with it, or we don't set a boundary at all and it's a free-for-all. There's a spectrum. And strong-willed kids are really magnetically attracted to and drawn to leadership that is willing to negotiate with them and set terms that are established together that value their input and allow them to have a voice, because that ownership gives them the leg they need in the door to care about the outcome. Without their engagement, frankly, they don't care about the outcome. And if we want the outcome, we want to know what's the most effective way to get to the outcome. And with strong-willed kids, we have to take a different approach to that, because where another kid might say, yeah, I just really want my parent to be happy, or I really want to get this little carrot at the end. That is not the way that strong-willed kids are motivated. And they will be very clear that, sure, take my door. I don't care. Cancel the trip to Disney World. Like, I don't care. So when we're trying to work within that binary, it backfires. So we have to give ourselves permission to know it is going to look more messy when we are trying to work with them to create said established outcomes, because that does create compromise and wiggle room and negotiation. And that does not mean that we are giving them our sense of authority by doing that. We're actually stepping into our leadership by saying, I've thought through this. I'm being strategic. I know exactly what I am willing to give up, what I, am not. And here's, how I need your help. And being able to do that in a way that still stands very tall and is very energetically clear without guilt, and kind of sets the energy rather than them setting the energy, which again is a whole skill set that takes time. But we want to know what the goal is and what does that actually even look like. So when you are trying to determine, is this a hill to die on, or is this a battle worth choosing, in and of themselves, you can do the math to create confirmation bias either way, right? Like you can find any reason in the world to say, sure, they can have another snack or, whatever, because we can always come up with a reason. But the problem comes when we don't have that overarching understanding of why is it okay for me to have made an exception to that rule and know that I'm not going to make that same decision tomorrow morning. And how do I reset? And how do I know that they're going to also understand the difference between me saying yes now and no later? So when you, in and of themselves, you don't want to be making those microcosm decisions in the moment. As much as possible, you want to think big picture on those full-on patterns and be able to know, okay, when it comes to these overall circumstances, they don't make or break them as a human being, right? They are more for convenience or out of my preference. And while I would love for this to be faster or go just a little bit differently, I also understand that I am giving them a space to be human, and it's okay. And I can work with that. Whereas on these other issues, they are morally important. They are value-based. They very much are teaching skills or sending messages and lessons to learn that I know I want to almost like reserve my patience by letting those other things go so that I have the patience to teach these things very strategically and be able to either have more to give or be able to hold on to following through or whatever that looks like. But again, in that moment, even if it's a value issue, even if it's them hitting you or biting a friend or running in the street or touching the hot oven or whatever those, clearly, yes, this is something that I have to follow through on. You are responsible as their parent to intervene, not to have already seen it coming and prevent it. And if they do it, you're a horrible parent. No, they have permission to struggle, learn their own lessons the hard way. Just because it exists doesn't mean that you did anything to invite that. You're responsible to intervene. And again, intervening can have a smorgasbord of options of what that looks like. It's not a hard and fast, this is what it looks like to intervene. I yell, I, pick them up, I do all these things to send the message. No, sometimes intervening can be making a joke. Sometimes intervening can be calling attention to something else to stop the ongoing issue and then later on have an important conversation that's going to be much more effective and heard and circle forward into what do we do differently. So again, you have a lot more bandwidth than we think we do. We have a very narrow view sometimes of what it looks like to actually be a good parent that follows through on boundaries. And the more you feel like you actually have options, the less you're going to feel desperate, like your back's against the wall, and it's either a do or don't, and you either fail or you win or they win. The more it's these big polar binaries and only one thing can be true, the more we're going to be pigeonholed into feeling like we're not doing it. We're failing them. We're not holding up our end of the bargain. But it's actually much more nuanced in a good way. That means as long as you can identify when a moment does matter enough and you do intervene where you stop ongoing harm and you disrupt the opportunity for them to continue going down whatever bad path that was, then you've already done half of what you're here to do. The other half is identifying if there's a problem to solve with that. Why did they run into the street? Right? Do we need to have a conversation about safety? Do we need to read a book about, cars? Or do we need to, what is missing here in your understanding? Or why did he feel so disconnected that he had to, out of spite, run away from me in that moment? Me being able to step back, sometimes in hindsight, because in a split second, we don't have all the information, identifying, okay, there's a couple problems to solve maybe here. Now, how do I put my energy into solving those problems before it happens again? And again, you can have a 12 to 24-hour window where that happens, where you can always circle back, have a conversation. You can set things up differently. You can take a toy out of the car that was being a problem. There's a lot. You can change the environment. You can do all these things before we go back to the park or whatever the incident was. And that might be a lot longer than you feel like you're comfortable with, usually feeling like you have that in the spot. I'm on, I need to react. And then in this moment, that was my window and now it's gone. No, the window exists until that behavior has the opportunity to happen again. So sometimes that can be quick, but sometimes that, it could be another 3 months before we go back to a certain place or have another birthday party or whatever. Okay, cool. I have a long runway to kind of influence that behavior. It's probably going to be more effective the longer I create a strategy around it and take in more information and then create kind of a multifaceted approach to this rather than feeling like, oh no, I missed the window and now they got away with it and, they're going to be a horrible person in 20 years. And that's inevitable. So that is like a part 1 that leads right into a part 2, which is going to be an episode on problem solving that I share in a couple weeks. In the meantime, we have a 3-part series and then a really exciting guest. So I hope you stay tuned. And that second part of it is going to be my biggest mantra, my most important takeaway I want you to have as a listener of this podcast. So don't go anywhere. Make sure to stay with us in May. Leave that review and stay tuned for part 2. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Failing Motherhood. Your kids are so lucky to have you. If you loved this episode, take a screenshot right now and share it in your Instagram stories and tag me. If you're loving the podcast, be sure that you've subscribed and leave a review so we can help more moms know that they are not alone if they feel like they're failing motherhood on a daily basis. And if you're ready to transform your relationship with your strong-willed child and invest in the support you need to make it happen, schedule your free consultation using the link in the show notes. I can't wait to meet you. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. I believe in you, and I'm cheering you on.